Today, you are going to learn how to compare fractions with the same denominator. And if you remember from my previous lesson, the denominator is the number that's usually at the bottom of the fraction. So if we had 3/7, the denominator would be 7. It would also tell us that there are 7 equal parts and there are 7 parts to the entire whole. So today's lesson is about comparing fractions with the same denominator. So let's look at these two. We have Jen and we have Jack, and they have both bought pizza, and the pizza is in the square shape. Now, Jen has had 1/4 of her pizza. 1/4 of her pizza, but Jack has had 3/4 of his pizza. Now, how do we know that Jen had 1/4? Well, Jen had 1 out of her 4 slices. And how do we know that Jack had 3/4? Well, Jack had 1, 2, 3 out of his 4 slices. So how can we compare this? How can we compare fractions with the same denominator? Well, you can compare two fractions with the same denominator because here this is 4 and this is 4 with the same denominator by comparing their numerator. You would just focus on their numerator to determine which one is greater. Now, the one with the greater number or the greater numerator is usually the greater fraction. And even just by looking, you could tell that, well, Jack ate way more parts of his pizza than did Jen. And with that being said, that would mean that Jack has a greater portion, or his contains more parts of the whole, because the whole right here is 4 parts, and he has actually gotten 1, 2, 3, almost all of the whole. So here, I know you've probably heard of the alligator's mouth, and the alligator's mouth can go these two ways, which is really the less than and the greater than sign. This is the less than and the greater than sign. And I always say, if I can't remember, the less than actually looks like the letter L, but just a little bit slanted. The less than looks a little bit like the letter L. And the greater than is obviously the sign that is opposite. So here you would say, well, which one is greater? Is 1 greater than 3 or is 3 greater than 1? Well, 3 is greater than 1. 3 is greater than 1. So what would we put? Well, we would put that the alligator's mouth usually goes, for some reason, the alligator is always hungry. The alligator's mouth always goes for the bigger piece. So it would say, well, this is the bigger piece. But if we're reading it, it's basically saying 1/4 is less than 3/4. 1/4 is less than 3/4. And just to show you what I mean when I said the L, this looks like an L, less than. I cannot write less than this way. It would not look right at all. So 1/4 is less than 3/4. Let's look at another example. We have Jen and Maggie. Jen and Maggie. And they both have buttons. Here are their buttons. Let's see if they have the same amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we were to come up with their fraction, we already know that their denominator is 6. Why is their denominator 6? Well, in total, Jen has 6 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Maggie also has 6 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the ones that I'm going to shade are blue. So we're going to see what fraction of the buttons are blue for Jen and what fraction are blue for Maggie. So what fraction of the buttons are blue for Jen? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. 5 out of 6. 5/6. 5/6. And what fraction are blue for Maggie? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3/6. And as I said before, in order to compare our fractions with the same denominator, what do we focus on? We focus on our numerator. And the numerator with the greater number is usually the one which is greater. So which one is greater? We're looking at 5 and we're looking at 3. Which one is greater? Is it 5 or is it 3? Just even look at this. Use those eyes. Which one is greater? And remember, we have or less than sign and or greater than, or less than and or greater than. And as I've said, you can always use that alligator strategy. Now, which one is greater? Is it the 5 or is it the 3? Well, if you said 5, you're correct. So this is what it would look like. 5/6 is greater than 3/6. Isn't that right? 5/6 is indeed greater than 3/6. That's what it's saying. Why is it greater than? Because it contains more parts of the whole. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 out of this whole of 6. And this is only 3 out of the 6, which is also its whole. So you see why this is actually greater than this. Let's do one more activity. Well, let's look at, these are all some books that were bought. Books that were bought. Okay? And these books were bought by Jill, and these were bought by Amy. Yes, Jill and Amy. Now, why did I put these here? Because, I'm going to ask for the fractions for both. So let's look at this. And I know you could start trying to figure out what the denominator is for this one. You could try to figure out what's the denominator for this one as well. What's happening here? So what's the denominator? If we're going to try to figure out what's a fraction right here, Jill's books are blue, so she has these blue books, and Amy also has these blue books. Now, what fraction of Jill's books are blue? Well, the first thing to do is find out what's the denominator. What's the denominator? Count everything that's here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even the ones that have been shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We place it here. And let's do this for Amy. What's the denominator for Amy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's figure out what's the denominator. How many out of the 6 are blue for Jill? 1, 2, 3. What do we do here? 1, 2, 3. Also the same. What does that mean? What does that mean if both fractions have the same denominator and the same numerator? Well, that indicates that the fractions are equivalent. Equivalent. I wonder if this word looks like anything you've ever seen before. Well, if you said equal, then you're correct. And this is the sign that would go there. 3/6 is equal to 3/6, or you could say is the same as. So 3/6 is the same as 3/6. Now, do you realize that this 3/6 looks a little bit different than this? But that doesn't mean they're not the same. It's still 3 out of 6 that were shaded here, and 3 out of 6 that were shaded here. So you've learned about greater than, less than, as well as is the same as or equivalent fraction. And when it's an equivalent fraction, that means the numerator and the denominator are the same. The numerator is the same as the other fraction, and the denominator is the same as the other fraction. What would that look like? Just like this. Just like this. 2/4 is the same thing as 2/4 because it's 2 out of 4 and 2 out of 4. We've just learned equivalent fraction, guys. So now, what do we know about comparing fractions with the same denominator? We focus on the numerator. We focus on the numerator, and the numerator with the greater number is going to be the greater fraction because it contains more parts of the whole. So what do? We compare the numerator. What did we do here? We compared the numerator because this was the same. Because 6 is not greater than 6. What did we do here? Compare the numerator, but this one was a little bit different because we learned that the fraction was actually equivalent, which means it's equal, which also means it is the same as. It is the same as. I hope this video was very helpful for you. That's what it is for, comparing fractions with the same denominator. If you enjoyed this video or found this video very helpful, please leave a comment or give it a thumb up. Thanks for watching.